Nope, haven't got you, bud. Oh, no, I have.
Good morning, gearheads. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Speed City F1 on Sirius XM. This is John Massengill. I'm sitting in the studio, but I have Les Kaiser and Jonathan Green joining me via Zoom. How's it going, boys?
Yeah. Have you got no friends, John?
I'm socially distant in the studio.
Good deal.
Well, how are you boys? You guys got some coffee and ready to do some Formula One talk?
No coffee needed. What a great quality. Watch that again. That was excellent. I love the jumbled up mess that resulted.
That was qualifying. Well, we are now about an hour and 10 minutes from the start of the Hungarian Grand Prix for Formula One, third round of this strange pandemic shortened season. But we are excited to talk about this, and we've got a great couple of guests for us today. And, of course, you're going to be able to hear the pre-show here for an hour before the race, the entire race, right here on Channel 211 on Sirius XM. And then stick with us after the race because we have a post-race show. And our guest today, Eric Boulier, is going to join us here on the pre-show here shortly. And on the post-race show, continuing with our young driver guests, we have Pietro Fittipaldi. And he's a reserve driver for the Haas F1 team, amongst other things. So he's going to join us as well. But, boys, I am ready to get started talking about this Grand Prix because it looks like we have got some rain. What do y'all think about that?
I love it. Hungary's one of the toughest tracks there is, full stop. And it's usually really hot here. But add a little sprinkling of rain, and we don't know how much rain we've got. It's wet at the moment, and obviously we've got an hour before the race. But it was pretty darn wet when I tuned in just a moment ago. But, yeah, that's just going to add more spice to what is already a really interesting grid.
Yeah, and the way it's funny. I was just watching the coverage on television, and they're talking about the forecast, and we don't know. Obviously, it could get downpour. We don't know yet, but they were talking the drivers going down the grid a little bit, trying to get their take on how this would affect the race. And in fact, it was funny because Lando Norris was just talking, and he thinks that he was a little hesitant because you think about normally anybody down the grid, they're like, "Give me some rain, bring the rain on to level the playing field with Mercedes," but Lando was a little less enthusiastic about that with McLaren doing so well lately. And I don't know, Jonathan, do you think this will give anybody any advantages down the grid?
Yeah, I actually think it might change the strategy a little bit because if we do genuinely start with a damp track, it might lead to somebody to try something different in terms of strategy, or it might be that we get a wet start with a drying up, which would throw up the change of a pit stop for the first pit stop with a view to maybe starting on wets and going to dry. But like I said, we're an hour out. But it does. I mean, it's just another factor. It adds to all of it. And I'd say bring it on. It's going to be good.
Well, let's talk about the Hungaroring and the Hungarian Grand Prix a little bit because this track has been around since 1986 was the first year of this Grand Prix, and Nelson Piquet won the first one here, and with his Williams on the track racing Ayrton Senna. So, and the circuit itself, we've got, Jonathan, you'd be a good person to describe the circuit because people talk about Monaco levels of downforce and stuff, but it's not quite that degree, right?
Giant go-kart track.
Huh. I like that.
No, that's a flippant, but it's very tight. It's one of the slower tracks we go to. There's no real straight, so it's not a horsepower track, but it's tricky. It's green because it's not used as much as some of the other tracks. We've had rain in the last 2 days, which will make it greener. Of course, it's raining now. So there's not going to be a lot of grip out there. It's heavy on tires because of the heat, but we'll see, generally speaking, how hot it is, given that we've had the rain. So that might be a leveler. Yeah, it's tough. It's very hard to overtake. A lot of strategy involved in terms of getting clean air and getting in and out of the pits with trying to create some space to run. What you don't want to do is be caught behind Giovinazzi in a Mercedes, with 20 laps to go, because we've seen in the past. We've seen some upsets at Hungary in the past. I remember Damon Hill in a Jordan doing brilliantly here. There's Hungary's one of those places that it's a bit of an anomaly. Something different can happen at Hungary, and often does.
Yeah, well, I know that some of the teams have talked about downforce and all the different settings that you would do on a track like this, but I want to talk about one of the teams that was talking about that exactly, and that was Ferrari, because they've had so much. It's really been a disastrous start to the season for Ferrari. I mean, would you guys have guessed it, that we've got Ferrari in 5th place after 2 rounds? I mean, I know that they were not expected to have the best year, but 5th place. And I thought it was hilarious because I saw on the F1 website they had an article, and they said, which of these mid-pack teams do you expect to do well this week? And Ferrari was in the mid-pack. But
how the mighty.
Yeah, exactly. But that's where we are with Ferrari, isn't it?
Yeah.
That is, to me, that's crazy that they're that far back. That's 2 spots back from where I think I expected them at the beginning of the year. But then, man, Bottas up front after so many races already, that surprises me. I'm not upset about Bottas at all, but Ferrari being so far back, that genuinely is a surprise.
Well, gentlemen, we have our guest has joined on the line, and I am very excited because we have a gentleman who has spent many years in Formula One, and I want to welcome to the show Eric Boulier. Eric, welcome to Speed City. You know what? I saw someone join the call, and it may be Dave O'Neill. Dave, is that you on the line?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, sorry.
Here from sunny VIR.
Well, you're in VIR. Awesome. Well, what's going on up there? How's the weather there? It looks like it's rain in Hungary.
Yeah. Well, here, mid-90s, plenty of humidity, and just about to go out in about half an hour for a Formula 4 race.
Good track, isn't it?
It is, yes. Yeah, I like it. Pretty twisty. Got some long straights on it. But yeah, nice place.
I hear the Speed City magic is working on Spike Kulbecker.
Yes, he had a great race yesterday. Like to see what happens today. I think they spin the top 10 around, so he'll have to do some overtaking to put himself on the podium for this race.
He got a second place yesterday, yeah.
Second place, yeah. Very close to the leader. There's a few opportunities here to overtake, so hopefully he gets himself in some good positions today and does the business.
Dave, just a quick question for you. I mean, you've been to the Formula Ford Festival. You've been around the tracks in the UK. How does the talent in the US at this level, Formula 4, Formula 3, compare? Do you see? I mean, it's great that you're out there because we're all sort of chomping at the bit to find the next big I am. Logan Sargent's doing a great job in FIA F3 in the top 3 at the moment. But have we got talent coming?
I think we have, yeah. It's kind of one of these things with the COVID that has done good for the lower formulas. Certainly, with Indy Lights been shut down for this part of the year. It's pushed some of the talent back into Formula 4 and Formula 3. The Formula 3 grid has now grown quite considerably, and with that happening, you tend to get better racing, and with better racing, you get more people wanting to join. If you win it, it's a good championship to win now. The Formula 4, you got probably upwards of 30 cars on the grid. So I think there's some people here that are making the numbers up, but there's certainly some people here that have got talent. And again, as the season goes on, you tend to see these guys poking their head above the parapet weekend after weekend, whether it's qualifying or during the race, or putting fastest laps in. And Spike's certainly done a good job this weekend. But yeah, there's plenty of young talent here, not just from the States, which is good, but from the Americas and no one from Europe currently because of the current climate, as we all know. But yeah, it's a good championship.
Well,
Good.
Dave O'Neill, what do you think of when you think of the Hungarian Grand Prix? We're about an hour out now.
It's normally fun-filled. Rain, in my experience, has played some big parts. Generally very, very hot and very, very humid. So I'd say a difficult one for the drivers. There's never much time to relax there. There's one short straight. The rest of the time you're twisting, you're turning, you're braking, looking in your mirrors. So it's a busy one for the drivers for sure. There is only one decent place to overtake, which is into turn one. I think you mentioned earlier, John, with Senna and Mansell, that famous overtake with the cars sparking going down into turn one. So yeah, and the rest of the time you're kind of setting yourself up for that corner. So keeping the tires warm, not overheating them, of course, and then making sure that you get yourself lined up for the overtake on turn one. Turn two, there's opportunity there, but of course, as soon as you go offline, it's pretty dusty, so you lose an awful lot of grip. So you have to be pretty committed if you're going to do any of the overtakes on turn two. We've seen it happen before. I think with Vettel and one of the Red Bulls. I think it was last year. There was a couple of overtakes, maybe the year before actually, at turn two. But apart from that, there's not a great deal of opportunity to get it done there. You suffer with an awful lot of blue flags there. Again, big problem for the leaders, which they have to deal with, and also of course the back markers. They're in their own race as well. It's not just the leaders that are after the points. The top 10 are as well. And also championship positions at the end of the year. So difficult to manage blue flags, but it certainly plays a huge part in this race.
Well, Dave, I know we only have you for a few minutes before you got to get back out to the circuit out there, but before you leave today, I have to ask you about the Renault protest of Racing Point. I mean, look, you've been in a team manager role before. What do you think about this? First of all, is the protest, do you think that they have a leg to stand on, as they say, and what do you think might come of the outcome?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's without being inside the four walls, as they say.
Sure.
For sure, they won't be doing it for fun. They have something they believe that is wrong. And they've put their money down. It's only €2,000, I think, but you have to go through the procedure. It actually has to be cash as well, believe it or not.
Really?
Unless €2,000 in cash. So they. I mean, what would have happened is they have all the photographers, they take the images back, they scan them, put them on the computer, scan them, check, see what they can see. So I'm sure they would have taken pictures of the Mercedes brake ducts, they would have taken pictures of the Racing Point ones, and they've picked on that particular part to go and protest. And from what I can see and what I've read and, and spoken to people, is they're going to go after the brake ducts race after race after race with a protest, and until they get their answers. As we all know, as it states in the rules, you can buy the parts off another team, and they're all clearly listed there. So in in layman's terms, you can buy all the suspension, the engine, the gearbox, the battery, the steering wheel, the steering column, the steering rack, and some of the braking system as well. The bits you can't buy are the aero surfaces, so the chassis, all the crushable structures like the nose, the chassis, and the rear crash structure. So the brake ducts, again, huge bit of development there. You spend millions and millions on brake ducts, you can get some serious performance out of them on the downforce side. So I'd say there's a big advantage that Racing Point have found there, whether it's with theirs or with the Mercedes one. I can't actually see Mercedes getting involved in something as controversial as this. I really can't see that Mercedes would be involved in this. They would have laid everything out at the beginning and said, these are the bits you can get, and this is all you're getting. So maybe they are close, but if you put all the F1 cars together and stand 20 meters back, they all look the same.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a difficult one, but I think it's more of a Renault sort of making a point, I guess. I don't know.
You're almost intonating that they're really, the brake ducts are just a byproduct of them saying that they've copied Mercedes, right?
I think so, yeah. They had to pick on something, and the rear wing was the other one, but the rear wing now is on a monopylon that Mercedes have gone to. So the rear wing that Racing Point have got now is what Mercedes tested in Barcelona for winter testing. So the brake ducts are the only big, obvious, chunky bit that you can say that looks exactly like the Mercedes part. And then, of course, when you start taking it apart, does it inside? There's loads of little ducts inside that go to the brake caliper, go to the brake disc, go to the brake bell, cool sensors, cool wheel bearings, etc. So yes, it might look like the same on the outside, just like every biscuit tin looks round. But once you get inside, the sweets are all different, or the candy's all different. So that's the bit that Renault can't see, is the inside. However, I think it's more of a statement than anything.
Yeah.
Well, Dave O'Neill, I know you had just a few minutes with us this morning, so we appreciate you dialing in while you're out there at VIR, and hopefully you get a chance to at least hear or watch a little bit of the race today. But we appreciate it, and have a good time out there in VIR.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll try and follow it on Twitter and hopefully speak to you guys later.
All right, Dave, thanks a lot. All right, we're going to take our quick break, and we'll be back after these messages.
And
Hello, I'm Felipe Massa, and this is Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on Sirius XM.
All right, welcome back to the show. We are just about 50 minutes from the start of the Formula One Hungarian Grand Prix. Jonathan, you've been to this circuit, and how far outside Budapest is it?
It's about 40 minutes. It's a really beautiful setting. Budapest is one of the most beautiful cities I've ever been to, right there on the Danube. As Dave said, it's usually unbearably hot in midsummer there. It's right in the middle of Europe. So it doesn't tend to get any sea breeze or anything like that. So it can be very hot, but it's very beautiful. A great part of the world, and of course the Hungarians live for this event. I mean, this is about as big as it gets for them to have Formula One, and it was certainly one of Bernie's most consistent, and as you said, 35 years. It's been on the calendar for a long time. So it may not be as famous as a Monaco or a Monza, but it's certainly up there in Formula One terms in consistency.
Yeah, 35 years, not bad. Hey, I want to give out the phone number in case anybody wants to call in. We want to get your opinion on what you expect to see out of today's race. The number's 512-643-LIVE, 512-643-5483 if you want to call in and join the conversation. And what is this, 2.7 miles? This is definitely one of the shorter tracks on the calendar. The calendar, it's funny, the abbreviated COVID calendar, as we would call it. But yeah, we've talked about the tight circuit, short circuit, and so with rain thrown in today, this ought to be really interesting. But, Jonathan, I want to ask you, and then you, Les, we've got Mercedes at the front, and they looked so fast yesterday in qualifying. And, I mean, almost like they're pulling away again. But what do you guys, Dave was talking about the Racing Point team and their pink Mercedes, their Tracing Point, whatever you want to nickname this car.
Tracing Point, I like that.
Yeah, I've heard that one a few weeks ago, but I thought I'd bring that one back. Anyway, they look so amazingly fast, and at this point we've got them second and third, locking out the second row on the grid. Jonathan, what do you think? Do you think that they can compete long term throughout the season? This speed looks incredible.
I really do. And I think, right or wrong, their ability, and obviously I also heard on Checkered Flag yesterday, Otmar Safnar talking about how Racing Point have nothing to hide, and they designed the brake ducts and the whole car. Sure, they copied a lot from Mercedes, but that's the best car out there. They've also got a Mercedes engine. So if they are not found foul of the law, we're in for a doozy of a season, because Racing Point, which used to be Jordan, all the way back, have suddenly gone from midfield to potential winner. I mean, Lance Stroll, a Canadian, 22, third on the grid. Who would have predicted that?
Yeah, good timing for him, too, with all the silly season talk going on right now. But Les, what do you think about... Well, wait, before we ask you the same question, let's set the table a little bit here, because we keep talking about them looking at photos and copying the car, and Snapfire saying, hey, we got nothing to hide. But wait a minute, can you just copy an F1 car if you have the photographs, Jonathan?
Yeah. As long as you design the piece yourself.
As long as you design and build the aero bits. I guess Dave really hit on that. But what do you think, Les? What do you think about the Racing Point team?
Well, at this moment, that's all legal. If you look at the laws or the rules there, you can trace, photograph and trace. You cannot get the plans from that other team. So as frustrating as that is, I'd like to see some originality, which put them at the back of the grid, to be honest. I kind of feel like that wasn't their own development. At what point are we just going to be copycats and losing our creativity, or the creativity really being driven by 1, 2, or 3 teams? To me, that kind of undermines the thoughts of Formula One, that we're cutting edge, or, the Formula One teams in the paddock are very creative. They're engineering smart, all those kind of things. Well, if it comes into copying so much detail, you could aptly apply tracing point team. I think that crosses the line and the intention of the sport.
But don't you? I mean, we didn't seem to have a problem with Toro Rosso at the time, effectively being the guinea pig for the Honda engine a couple of seasons ago. So, this is how you use a junior team, and why wouldn't Racing Point be a Mercedes junior team, if you will?
Very true. It's a hard point to argue because you can see it going both ways. By having that junior team, it allows you a little freedom to experiment with that group and support the primary team. Is that allowable? Should it be allowable? Things like that. I think what happens is the bigger teams get bigger using a junior team like that. Feel sorry for the Williams in that case. Is it a fair setting for the Williams not to have an underling team, junior team there to support them and get them going? It's a tough thing when we talk about budget limitations. Is this a workaround for getting what's going to stop anybody from having two junior teams to support their team, thus kind of sharing or distributing that budget or collecting an extra budget because of that junior team?
You know what? We can argue that point all the way up and down, but the end result as of right now is that we've got better racing because we've got we've got somebody else besides Ferrari and Mercedes and Red Bull up at the top. And so I'm just going to sit back and enjoy it right now because it is amazing to see, a midfield team battling for the top. I mean, battling for the best of after Mercedes. The best of the rest is now defined by everybody but Mercedes, even more so this year than in the past.
Well, and hey, Williams is not last in qualifying.
Nowhere near. I mean, we talk about Racing Point moving forward. Look at Williams.
Yeah, amazing. And what about George Russell? I think he also, we talked last week about Lando Norris gaining so much confidence during the shutdown of the pandemic in digital racing in the virtual series. Well, George Russell won that series. And I think that this guy's gained confidence from that because George Russell this year has just come out looking just amazing, and yesterday in particular.
I love it. He's given his boss an early birthday present to Claire. That is, it's fantastic. And again, with Frank Williams as the founder. He's been around so much, and he did race before his injuries. I love seeing that coming back, even if it's only for one race. Certainly, I hope it's more than that. But I
think it's more than that. I really do. I think Williams have stepped forward, and I think George Russell's just showing his talent. Now he's got something better to work with. They too have that Mercedes engine. By the way, this weekend, George Russell has Claire has given him another contract for next year. He remains a Mercedes option for the future, but he will stay at Williams next year.
Yeah, you can't call it declared until he leaves.
Right. That's officially declared, right?
Yes, and also his teammate Latifi also confirmed for next year as well. Speaking of next year, of course, all the rumors now about Sebastian Vettel potentially going to Racing Point and then leaving one of those two seats, either Sergio Perez or Lance Stroll, without a drive. And boys, I think that one's obvious. That it's become more obvious this week. It looks like that Dad's son, Lance Stroll, is going to keep his seat, and that Sergio Perez would lose his seat if that Vettel move comes true.
Yeah. You have to ask the question, would you have Perez or would you have Vettel? Right now, I'd have Perez. And by the way, Stroll's third on the grid. Perez is fourth on the grid. I mean, nothing wrong with the drivers they got. I really don't necessarily understand it. I know that he's a four-time world champion and putting a winning driver in your team is good, but Perez is not a man to just throw away. He's got $10 million in his pocket. Haas would whip him up.
Yeah. And you know what? Let's
Sure.
touch on that a little bit. You said it, Jonathan. He brings $10 million in money, in sponsorship money, wherever he goes. And you and I talked, Jonathan. It's like, would you take Vettel or Perez? Like you just said, you'd take Perez, but Vettel brings that intangible to your team, that gravitas or whatever you want to call it, of a 4-time champion coming to your team. So you have to consider that if you have the opportunity to take Vettel. And I've been the one bashing on Vettel of all the mistakes he's made. So this is really going to be interesting. But we got to, hey, Les, hold your thought, buddy. We got to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue that discussion. You listen to Speed City's coverage on Formula One on Sirius XM. We'll be back after these messages.
Hello, I'm Jenny Gow from BBC F1. You are listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on Sirius XM.
Let's see what the Mercedes can do then. Pole position shootout fight. Hamilton launches into a lap. Bottas just behind. This is it. Final run.
Yep. Valtteri Bottas leads the World Championship after 2 races by 6 points. Lewis Hamilton trailing him at the moment, but if he can secure a pole position, that'll put him in very good stead for the Grand Prix tomorrow, naturally, which you can hear on the BBC Sport website and app. It gets underway at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Hamilton, not that quick through the first sector, 0.02 of a second slower than he managed before, but Bottas is the one that really has to improve. He comes through the first sector now and he is improving, pretty much matching Hamilton in sector 1.
That's where he had a bit of a deficit before, so Bottas has made up part of that 0.3 deficit to Hamilton, who didn't improve his first sector, but he's putting in a ballistically quick middle sector right now, Lewis Hamilton. Bottas improving just behind. Hamilton does the fastest middle sector of anyone, and is just, well, he's still a 10th up on his best. What does Bottas do just behind, though?
He comes through the middle sector now and he's a 10th away from Hamilton, so Hamilton has the edge coming into the final couple of corners, gets on the power out of turn 14. He's going to improve his lap time here, does a 1 minute 13.447, but can Valtteri Bottas beat that? He is coming through the final corner now, out across the line, and Bottas can't do it. He misses out by 1/10 of a second. Hamilton takes pole position for the 7th time in Hungary. He'll start the race tomorrow on pole, just 1/10 of a second ahead of his teammate Valtteri Bottas, with the fastest ever lap around the Hungaroring. A second clear of the rest of the field, the Mercedes. They are absolutely walking to the title this year.
Well, there you go, everybody. That was what you heard here on SiriusXM yesterday in qualifying. And here we sit today with Lewis Hamilton on the pole once again, and Valtteri Bottas, Lance Stroll, Sergio Perez. And then we have a couple of Ferraris, guys. I am excited to see the Ferraris back looking good because it was miserable before that. So you had Sebastian Vettel in 5th, Charles Leclerc in 6th. Then Max Verstappen in the Red Bulls, which have not looked good this weekend. Then Lando Norris, Carlos Sainz, Pierre Gasly rounding out the top 10. Then Daniel Ricciardo, George Russell, Alexander Albon, Esteban Ocon, Latifi, then Magnussen, then Kvyat, and then Roman Grosjean, Antonio Giovinazzi, and Kimi Räikkönen wrapping up the grid for qualifying. But, boys, the silver arrows, as in the black livery now, look unstoppable right now.
Yeah, as Jack Nicholls said, they're walking to another title, and it's only round 3 of a like you say, a shortened series. If it is just 10 rounds, which is, 8's enough for a world championship, they're well on their way. Bottas has had a better start than usual, which is good news for us because we've got some real competition. But it's going to be between those two. I don't know what's going on with Red Bull. They've got some sort of, Verstappen said there's something wrong with the car. And Verstappen, as we all know, does not mince his words. So there must be something wrong with the car. Albon, on the other hand, was put out in traffic and was very annoyed by that and therefore didn't get anywhere close to Verstappen's time. But he could be an interesting factor in the rain here today. Strategy-wise, they might try something clever with him because he's got nothing to lose.
Yeah, why not?
Max's crew got in trouble overnight the other night for breaking curfew. They've got some unique rules right now. They broke curfew. I have not yet heard from what the penalty or what the outcome of that is going to be, either in hopefully improved performance or with a slap on the wrist. But we shall see.
Hey, Jonathan, you said it a second ago. If we've only got 10 races, Mercedes is in a commanding lead already and if they win today, you're talking. Are you then talking an insurmountable lead after only 3 races?
Well, and also it's going to be fast and furious because we have a week off, which I'm sure they'll be delighted because they've had 3 on the bounce, and then we go straight into another doubleheader in Britain. And I would be saying that if Mercedes score top 3 in both those races, then you're looking at a game over situation.
That we do not want to hear, but maybe we'll have the other Mercedes crew, the pink one, trying to keep that battle going. But how about Sebastian Vettel out qualifying the young Leclerc? What do you think about that, Les?
I love it. Finally, is Sebastian back? He's at the bargaining table, so maybe this is part of it. We keep talking about Sergio Perez and the money he brings in his pocket to a team. I don't think it would take much effort for Sebastian Vettel to come in with money and sponsors in his pocket. So I've honestly not weighed that a great deal for Sergio. I just think it would be foolish for somebody not to get into the pockets of a 4-time champion and strengthen that name to come in and honestly meet Sebastian Vettel at the table negotiating against him.
Yeah, Jonathan, what do you think about that? You think that?
I'll tell you what it is. It's Formula One's a funny thing. If there's something on the, look, this is a cutthroat business, and if you've got something on the table, and he is a 4-time world champion, and he brings something to your team, whether it be a winning mentality or whether it be the kudos of being who he is. They are going to be Aston Martin as of next year. So there's a lot of factors like that. Aston Martin want to be associated with the highest of the high. I think Racing Point Hoffmeyer's being smart, or Stroll's being smart, because better to have a group of 3 drivers of that quality than give Vettel to another team. And it's clear from the press conferences this weekend that Vettel isn't done with Formula One just yet. And he said it himself. It's a combination of, yes, I'm in talks with Racing Point. I could retire, take a year off, but I want to be competitive. So he's not just gonna, fill in at Williams or something. He's gonna have to have something to get his teeth into, and that could be long term racing for Aston Martin in sports cars, for all we know. I mean, he's a study of the sport, is Vettel, and clearly he isn't done. He's not going to do a Rosberg and just retire.
Yeah. I don't think that, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. I mean, it wouldn't have surprised me the way he has been off his mental game with all the mistakes that he's made. It wouldn't have surprised me. But guys, we are now 28 minutes from the start of the race, and we still have a very wet track, which, as we know, can really turn a Formula One race I'm looking at the conditions now, John. And there's no question. I've got an eye on the conditions myself, and the cars are just going out. The rooster tails are 10 to 15 feet high. Visibility will be nothing, zero in the midfield. So in that respect, it's going to be a very unpredictable start, which could play into Mercedes' hands if they get it right, because in these sorts of conditions, anybody with decent vision, and I'm talking about the front row, is going to have a real advantage. Yeah, as we know, that behind that in these conditions, those rooster tails just make it almost impossible to see.
It's also a very, the lead up to the first turn, it's going to make it extra dicey. Somebody may build up quite a head of steam, but it'll be interesting how they take it. Or will they gamble everything on the first turn, knowing that you're going to be stuck in the rooster tails if you don't make some progress? The closer you are to the front, the thinner the rooster tail. So.
Yeah, and Verstappen and Perez, fantastic in the rain. Ocon, superb in the rain. Norris, great. Sainz, great. I think you're going to see whatever problems Red Bull have had, that Verstappen's going to be a factor.
Yes, no doubt. Hey, let's talk about qualifying a little bit. We touched on we went down the grid, but let's talk about what it looked like. So, Q1, the first thing that jumps to mind is that both Williams cars made it through, which that's the first time Nicholas Latifi has been in a Q2 in his short F1 career. And, of course, Racing Point, we saw how fast they were, but they set the pace in Q1. And I guess that's the next big story in Q1 was Ferrari struggling, and then, of course, Haas and Alfa both not making the cut coming out of Q1. But Q2, what do you think about the strategy, speaking of Racing Point and Q2, Jonathan, with their medium tire gamble? It looked a little dicey there.
Yeah, it was a very clever move, actually, I think. At the time, the commentators were a bit sort of dubious about it because it was a risk. So, in other words, they chose to go on the medium, not the soft tire, which is the faster tire by half a second. But that would allow them to start on the medium tire. It's all out the window now because it's wet. So it was yesterday it was a good strategy call. Today, not so much.
All right. Also in Q2, what about Gasly, who, wasn't he talking about, he was complaining about the power unit or something, and then all of a sudden you look up and he makes it into Q3. So that was another surprise. Also, what about the Renault cars? Les, what do you think about them? They both failed to make the cut.
That was surprising and honestly just quite disappointing. I'm really pulling for Daniel Ricciardo to get out there and show something good in Renault. The relationship between those two has been long coming, but I just don't feel, are they lagging that much, or has everybody else stepped up? And I see glimpses of both of that situation in that. I want to see Daniel Ricciardo solidly put it in and get up on the podium again.
Yeah, and you know what, guys? We have to remember, we're only 3 races into this crazy, not only shortened season, but delayed season where, how many months or weeks was it when they couldn't look at the cars, they couldn't do anything with the cars. So it's, we're still trying to figure out everything. And with only 10 races scheduled, and who knows how many total we're going to get, it's shortened, and we don't know what's going to happen. Everybody's still figuring this out. What else from qualifying? I mean, I guess that's really the bottom line is that Mercedes is fast, and so is Racing Point. And with Ferrari in the position they're in, I think that it's very possible they could battle for this race. But, Jonathan, what about our boys at Haas F1? Not looking good right now.
No, it's not. It really isn't. You look at places like Hungary and Monaco as being levelers when you don't have out-and-out power. And it doesn't matter if it's a short track, i.e., there's no long straight. So it's not like you're looking for top speed, as it were, but you still need a good torquey engine. You've got to get out of slow corners, and you've got to be quick. And for whatever reason, Haas just aren't there yet. They really are not there yet. We are into the third race of the season, and they're looking very uncompetitive. One little news story I can tell you, Gunter, our friend Gunter, not very happy at all with Grosjean, who went to the press conference and was asked about his future at Haas. And he said, well, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Will there be a Haas next year? Which Gunter wasn't too impressed with, but I don't blame him. Why? Don't talk to me about my future.
Yeah, that's not his role,
I've
is
got
it?
a car first.
Yeah. I agree. That is the big elephant in the room. Romain Grosjean, has been asked as well, and he's right. It's not his role to make the call. Certainly he wants a seat there, but he wants that seat to be closer to the front of the grid. The thing that I question with Haas is maybe Ferrari wasn't the right partnership. But with Ferrari turning around now or showing glimpses of goodness, will they stick with them further? I don't recall what the lifespan of that contract was with Ferrari, but honestly, I've got to question it now. Maybe Honda is an option.
Well, I'll tell you what, Les, that Ferrari partnership has certainly been good to them for the first 3 years. I mean, last year, not so much, but yeah. And I think maybe that's really your point right now, is that Ferrari's mysterious engine problem that we never heard the reason, we never heard all the story behind that. But that's what's all the Ferrari-powered cars are struggling with that. So, hey, going back to Grosjean, did you guys see the interview with Will Buxton? When Will Buxton asked Grosjean, we're talking about all the silly season about Perez and the possibility of Perez coming there, and Buxton asked Grosjean, he said, what about next year? And Grosjean was almost talking like retirement, kind of introspective kind of talk, like he wasn't sure he was even going to be racing next year. So that was really surprising to me that he would come out and say it like that. You just hardly ever see a driver, and unless it's imminent, like Sebastian Vettel's situation. But,
hey, John, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I've just seen a Red Bull go into the barriers on the warm-up lap.
Oh, you're kidding! I've not seen that. Who was it? Was it
Verstappen?
Oh, there's this. He has no front wing on his car right now. Oh my gosh!
Yeah, he just basically turned into the right-hander at turn 1, I think it was, and slammed it straight into the barriers on wet tires.
Yeah,
he's going to the grid without a front wing.
And that's usually not something they take out there. So let's look for the guy sprinting, pulling a
Marquez
100-yard
got
dash.
to him, but not good news.
No, wait a minute, Jonathan.
Close up of his eyes. He is not happy.
Is he going to go? He's got to be able to get back to the garage, right?
Well, no, what he's done is he's stayed on the grid, and I guess they're gonna try and manually pull that nose cone off and replace it.
Oh, on the grid.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've noticed
he's still in the car.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so he's bouncing across an apex.
Here's the crash. We're watching a replay of it. Yeah, he just locked the tires, and it was a pretty slow speed collision with the wall, but he ended up snapping the front wing off. So, and it looks like all the. Go ahead, Les.
Yeah, you're right. Locked up the tires. I saw the entry to the turn right there. He locked up, and that just sent him out the straight direction of the curb, which is not where he wanted to end that.
And, these close-ups of everybody, like the team manager, the close-up on Christian Horner, with the masks on, you can't see any expression, so we don't know we can't see the normal emotion in his face. But guys, I did notice it looks like all the cars headed to the grid on intermediary tires. So that tells you where we are with the rain.
Yeah, it's wet.
All right, well, guys, let's go ahead and take our last break. We are about 20 minutes from the start of the race, which you can hear the entire race right here on SiriusXM Channel 211. So stick with us through the break, and we'll wrap up and get prepared for the race. Listen to Speed City live from Austin, Texas. Back after a quick break.
Hi guys, Romain Grosjean from Haas F1 team, and this is Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
All right, welcome back to the show. We have about 16 minutes to the start of the Formula One Hungarian Grand Prix, third round of the Formula One season. And I want to play a couple of clips from the podium from yesterday's qualifying. In fact, let's start with Mr. Lance Stroll. And then, Jonathan, I want to ask you, get prepared, because I want to ask you about Lance Stroll after we hear this clip. Let's hear from Lance Stroll.
I didn't hear much of what you said. But
basically saying, you've been showed signs this year have been very quick. You eventually got that done, and you must be pretty delighted today how it's went.
Yeah, thank you. Very, very happy at the moment. The car was really strong all the way throughout qualifying, throughout the whole weekend, really. I mean, we've had the pace, and it was just about piecing it together during that qualifying session. Really great job by all the guys. I'm really pleased with the session, and now sights set on tomorrow, and gonna try and grab some big points.
I got a bit nervous in Q2 when you went back out in a set of mediums. You must have as well, because the times were pretty close.
For sure, it was a gamble. There's no doubt it was a gamble, but that's gonna put us in a good position for tomorrow. So I'm really happy that we managed to get through on the mediums, and my lap at the end really felt like it was spot on. So it always feels great when you put it all together at the end of qualifying.
I'm sure it's a smile under that mask.
Yeah, there's a big smile under here. All right. Cheers.
Okay, Jonathan, his medium tire strategy is, since he's starting on intermediates today, is not going to help him out. But what do you think about Mr. Stroll?
Well, I think it's an important weekend for Lance because, I mean, I've been critical of him in the past, because he's daddy's boy, and you're always kind of gonna, I don't know, you're gonna be kind of, I mean, he's had a silver spoon throughout his career. Dad has put the money in, and yet I will say this about Lance Stroll: he has constantly surprised us. Interestingly enough, on the way to Formula One, he's won every championship he's ever taken part in, including the Toyota Racing Series. So I saw him at first hand. So you can't knock him. But he's now, what I think why today is important, he truly has, whether it's a copy of Mercedes or not, got a competitive car. He's beaten Perez, who's no mean feat, in qualifying. And he now needs to put on a third place display, get the podium, and show us that he is not just daddy's boy. He's racing points number one.
I agree. I don't think he's ever been this far up on the grid, though.
No.
I'm anxious to see how he handles that more emotionally, and is he mature to handle this correctly, and if his emotions don't get the best of him and him have a turn one incident. But wish him well.
But he's fast,
it's
guys.
It's a romantic story of the underling blue-collar kid coming up, but I do wish him well.
I do, of course. But it's like you said, Jonathan, he surprised us over and over again. We've tried to give him a hard time about being daddy's boy, but he's fast. I mean, like you said, no mean feat to be faster than Perez, so you got to give him credit. And
it's a target on your back when you're the kid, of the team owner, So, yep.
Let's face it, having money, bringing money to a Formula One team is unbelievably important, but you got to be fast. And he's faster than I thought he was going to be. I mean, look, when we first started hearing about Sebastian Vettel coming to the team, you go, well, you'd be crazy to get rid of Perez, and do you take Lance? But then you start looking at what Lance has done, and you say the kid is fast. So, all right, let's move up the grid for the next clip here. Let's hear from the man number 2 in qualifying, Valtteri Bottas.
Valtteri, all the way to the end there. You just missed out by a tenth, but I guess you must be pretty happy to qualify in the front row.
Yeah, of course. I saw in FP3 that it's going to be a close battle with Lewis at least, and I think as a team we were again on a really strong level, pretty far from other teams, which is obviously good for us. My laps were okay. At the end, the Q3 lap was actually really good, but I just really couldn't go faster. So, Lewis did a great job today to get the pole. As always, it's going to be a bit of a drag race into turn 1 between us, so I look forward to that.
Still the championship leader, you're alongside him. The run to turn 1's important. Is that your best tactic tomorrow, to get a clean run to turn 1?
Yeah, it's of course, if you look at the points, it's a good situation, but what I need is to win races to maintain that. So that's going to be the only goal tomorrow, and I'm sure the first lap will be interesting.
Hey, Les, do you think that Valtteri Bottas can hold on to his 6-point lead after today in the championship standings?
I can't say I really know Valtteri's wet skills, but can he? I think if he gets out in front of Lewis to begin with, and there's any kind of shakeup in T1 that helps somebody further back in the grid get up there amongst them, I think there's a chance. Probably not likely. I love the idea of Valtteri winning. He's a great guy to cross paths with around the paddock, and just a humble guy. Personality-wise, I want him up there. One of the coolest things I saw last year when I was covering Monaco GP for him, that morning I'm walking in and Valtteri is jogging down the street. But, he stopped when one guy recognized him, and it was an adult. It wasn't like, most of them you see a kid and they all stop for a little kid. It was an adult. He stopped. He signed a quick autograph, patted the guy on the shoulder, and took off running. That personality makes me want to see him up front, and that he generally takes time. Skills. Absolutely, he's skilled.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure he's better than Lewis.
Hey, Jonathan, go ahead, Jonathan.
Yeah, I mean, this is a massive race for Valtteri because, sport, whether we like it or not, in Formula One is no different than any other sport. There's always a psychology with impetus. And right now, Valtteri's got that impetus. If you can turn Hungary into a win and extend that lead, changes everything going to Britain, which is, of course, Hamilton's home track. But, you know, if he comes second, sure, it doesn't do him any harm. It tightens the championship, but it means that Hamilton then goes on a blaze of glory into a doubleheader at Britain, and the rest is history, as it were. That's the impetus that Lewis needs. But this, like I said, if Valtteri can do something special here, or Hamilton has a problem, massive day for Bottas, because he would then have a cushion going into Britain that he can ride a little bit more and continue that impetus. That's what I mean by a psychological edge. He's never had that psychological edge, and it'll also be interesting to see how Mercedes play strategy now in these different conditions, because Valtteri's the championship leader, not Lewis.
Yeah, and this, you know, going into this season, we thought, okay, maybe this unusual season might be an opportunity for Valtteri Bottas to take that championship from Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton's speed has certainly not diminished, so I don't think that's, I mean, it's certainly still possible. But speaking of Lewis Hamilton, let's go ahead and hear Lewis Hamilton after grabbing the pole yesterday.
I have to pinch myself. It just doesn't register. It's quite humbling, to be honest, because, you know, I get to work with an incredible group of people who without I wouldn't be able to have the opportunity to do so. So massively thankful to everyone back home and the guys here that do such an amazing job. And Valtteri doesn't make it easy for me at all. So it requires absolute perfection when it comes to doing laps, and qualifying like that is one of the things I enjoy most.
Watching on boards, the car looks on rails. You're connected with it, aren't you?
I'm definitely connected with it. She's definitely not on rails, but I'm sure it looks like that, maybe compared to perhaps some other people. But it was really nicely hooked up today, and not far off the rails. So.
Just lastly, talking about records, you're going for an 8th win at a single event to match Michael Schumacher. You must be pretty confident you can achieve that, obviously starting where you are.
Oh man, it's a long run down to turn 1, so nothing's a given here. We just got to do the work this evening, and ultimately I've got to deliver on the start tomorrow, and it is quite a long race, so we don't know what this weather's going to do for us tomorrow, but for sure I have my head down and be focusing as hard as I can to try and bring a 1-2 home for the team.
Yeah, matching Michael Schumacher's 90th pole, and it was his 7th, of course, at Hungaroring, giving him also a tie with Schumacher for the most poles at an event. But obviously, Lewis Hamilton is not diminished his skills at all. And sorry, I'm distracted. I'm looking at the television, guys, because it looks like the Red Bull front wing is going to be on the car for Max Verstappen after.
Fixed it.
Yeah, if you just tuned in, Max Verstappen already crashed before the start of the race. slid in and snapped off his front wing, and so it looks like we've got that fixed.
The interesting thing is they actually had to work on a suspension some. I was watching it myself during that last break, and they were working on the left-hand side of the car from the driver's seat. But anyway, so they were working on the left-hand side, dealing with some suspension there as well. Looked like practically I would say almost all the garage was out there working on that.
All right, guys, it's that time. We've got about 3.5 minutes left in our coverage before we toss it out to the BBC and for the call of the race that you can hear right here on Channel 211 on SiriusXM. But I want to start with you, Jonathan Green, and see what you think. I know everything's kind of thrown out the window with the rain today, but the Mercedes car is out front. What do you think is going to happen?
A lot. I think this is going to be one where you need your pen and a piece of paper, because I think strategy will change. I think somebody midfield, you might see now Verstappen try something different. There's not a lot you can try in these conditions. You're all pretty much on the same tyres. But I think Red Bull have got the advantage in some ways of Verstappen starting a lot further up than Albon. Will they put Albon out on a long strategy, leave him out there, put Verstappen on a short strategy and maybe put him on dries if it starts to dry out? Or will it remain wet and it therefore is a wet race And then it really is going to be I think it's going to be a straight fight between the two Mercedes. And again, I talked to Dave O'Neill last night, and he reckoned that Mercedes would have a similar strategy rather than split their strategy, given that they're 1 and 2, and their number 2 is leading the championship. So, I mean, you know, to use the cliche, it is all about the first corner. And it really is who gets the wheel spin, who doesn't. If Valtteri can get the start and get ahead of Lewis, different game. If Lewis gets the start from pole he expects, normal service resumed, 1 and 2 for Mercedes, and they control the race. That would be, if I were Toto Wolff, that would be what I would be saying. It's just, guys, fight for the first corner, do not hit each other, and then we'll manage the race.
All right, Les Kaiser, what do you think?
I'm going to follow up and add something to Jonathan's last one. And don't be hit by Lance Stroll and his over-exuberance in the turn 1.
Yeah.
Hard Charger is one I'm going to call out. Watch Albon. He does not belong where he is starting this race. I expect him to really make moves to get up front. Sebastian Vettel, hopefully they've collected things. Watch Seb. He's good in the rain. I think it's going to go to Mercedes on the top step.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jonathan. I think my only prediction is I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, it's in the rain. If Mercedes does get out front, obviously, I mean, stay out front, then obviously it's going to be tough to stop them. But I think what I'd really like to see is I'd like to see that it would dry out, because I want to see what these pink cars really are all about. And in the rain, we can't really tell. I just want to see how fast they really are. And with the second row lockout, we might be able to find out. But all right, guys, we got to wrap up our coverage. We are going to toss it out to the BBC now and for the coverage of the race. And well, thanks everybody for tuning in. But don't forget, after the race, stick with us, because we have a full hour of post-race show. And get your pencil, write down the number. Give us a call after the race. We want to hear from you. 512-643-LIVE, 512-643-5483. Call us up. Tell us what you thought of the race and what you expect, what you want to hear from us, any takes from us. All right, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you after the race.